especially for the northwest, where 60 to 70 mile/hour wind gusts are a possibility early on Friday. The winds do ease through the day. Showers at first, eventually start to ease as well, but only a brief gap once again between weather systems on Friday because more unsettled weather returns for the weekend, mostly in the form of showers.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. This is Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan. He's been accused of going AWOL, but Rishi Sunak came back with a bang today, staking his premiership on 5 key pledges.
We will halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the boats.
But will Rishi's Hail Mary work? Will his prayers be answered? I'll analyse in my digest shortly. But I'll also ask my superstar panel, Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks and Nigel Nelson. Plus at 9:35, Westminster's toughest talking MP, Lee Anderson, gives his verdict on whether Rishi's plan can stop Labour and, in particular, can Sunak stop the boats? Amid fear that masks, social distancing and work-from-home orders will return, should we go back to COVID restrictions to save the NHS? We'll debate that. We'll hear from both sides in the clash. And I'll find out what you think. That's at 9:20 and sparks will fly. As he reportedly investigates the death of Princess Diana for his new memoir, is it time Prince Harry let his mother rest in peace? Social media sensation and self-professed chief gammon June Slater is Uncancelled at 10:40. After warnings that a quarter of our labour force are inactive, are work-shy Brits bankrupting the country? We'll debate that at 10. As he plans to make the subject mandatory for 18-year-olds, is Rishi Sunak wrong to prioritise maths over other subjects? We'll ask my highly educated panel at 10:30. And is white privilege a myth? I'll explore reports of the concept being blacklisted in Parliament in the company of top rapper, author and podcast host Zuby. He's at 9:45. Plus tomorrow's papers and Greatest Britain and Union Jackass along the way. This is Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan. Let's go. Will Rishi Sunak's 5-point plan buy him 5 more years in number 10? My digest is on its way, but first the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. In his first major speech of the new year, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak set out his government's 5 key priorities. He pledged to halve inflation, grow the economy, stop illegal immigration, reduce the national debt and cut massive backlogs in the NHS. He even told the public to hold him accountable if those waiting lists in England do not fall in 2 years' time.
Those are the people's priorities. They are your government's priorities, and we will either have achieved them or not. No tricks, no ambiguity. We're either delivering for you or we're not. We will rebuild trust in politics through action or not at all.
While Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said Labour also have plans to tackle the small boat crisis.
We do need to see action to clamp down on those criminal gangs that exploit people, and we would make sure that we're setting up a new part of the National Crime Agency to take action and to make sure that people are not making that journey, which, you know, as we've seen all too often, ends in tragedy.
The Royal College of Nursing accused Mr Sunak of being detached from reality following his speech. Its leader, Pat Cullen, says the pressures being felt by the NHS could not be blamed on COVID or the current high levels of flu cases. She says health leaders believe that staff shortages are the root cause of the issues. Nurses are preparing to go on strike again later this month after joining the picket line for the first time in the RCN's history last month. Well, the Prime Minister also touched on the ongoing rail strike, saying his government's door is always open for dialogues with the unions. It comes on the second day of the first of 2 48-hour strikes by rail workers, with over 40,000 RMT members walking off the job over pay, jobs and conditions. Train drivers in the ASLEF union will strike tomorrow, followed by a second 48-hour RMT strike on Friday. A man who raped and sexually assaulted dozens of children over a 6-year period has been jailed for life. This is footage of 50-year-old Martin Armstrong from Pembrokeshire being arrested in July last year after technology was used that unpixelated a picture of his face found in photos he'd taken of himself abusing his victims. And author Faye Weldon, best known for her novel The Life and Love of a She-Devil, has died at the age of 91. She published more than 30 novels during her career, as well as short stories and plays written for TV, radio and the stage. She was also one of the writers of the popular 1970s drama series Upstairs, Downstairs. Her family say she died peacefully in her sleep this morning. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton Tonight with Mark Dolan.
The Daily Star newspaper, which is, in my opinion, a cracking read, teased the Prime Minister today with their front page saying he's like that cartoon character Wally, who wears a stripy jumper, bobble hat and disappears from view into a big crowd. Here's the headline. Forget about where's Wally. Where's Rishi, they ask? Well, the lesser spotted Sunak has been spotted, and he may not be a Wally after all. Our Prime Minister, who's been in the post for just a matter of weeks, is a man with a plan. Well, actually, he's got 5. Take a listen.
So, 5 promises. We will halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the boats. Those are the people's priorities. They are your government's priorities, and we will either have achieved them or not. No tricks, no ambiguity. We're either delivering for you or we're not.
Casting a critical eye on his speech, you could say that some of those promises are really just creative accounting, the likes of which Gary Barlow or Jimmy Carr would be proud. After all, his promise to chop inflation in half is hardly an impossible task as the global cost of energy comes down and as demand for goods is reduced due to recession, which is always deflationary. Every man and his dog knows inflation is heading south. However, promising to cut it in half is still bold, and if he's able to deliver on that, we'll take it. You might expect NHS waiting lists to also come down by the summer, as they tend to. But in the end, whilst some of those pledges may have happened anyway, there isn't anything outlined that most people won't like. As shopping lists go, it's a belter. Boost the economy, reduce debt, cut inflation, get the NHS serving patients again, and tackle illegal migration. Boom! Of course, there is a risk that Sunak's 5-point plan will have echoes of former Labour leader Ed Miliband's Ed Stone. Do you remember that? With pledges carved into a block of granite. A block of granite, not a bad description for Miliband himself. But this is no gravestone for Sunak. In my view, when people have been asking where's Rishi, well, I think we've got our answer. He's been holed up at number 10, quietly making a plan to fix the country's problems. He knows that his job depends on it. And the beauty of today's speech is that it contains pledges, commitments, promises. Remember them? At last, a politician we can hold to account. Now, in January of last year, exactly 12 months ago, amid COVID tyranny and a number 10 operation in disarray, dogged by self-inflicted scandal after self-inflicted scandal, I went on the national television and radio airwaves and I called for Sunak to become Prime Minister. At the time, I said we needed a grown-up in the room. Well, after a tumultuous year and 2 Prime Ministers later, he's in the hot seat and it's time for him to deliver. So there it is in black and white. And what I liked about the speech is that he set the bar high, not just for himself, but for all of us, urging a change in the mentality of this country. Sunak is thinking big, not just for himself, but for Britain. Education, for example, must be the focus of government policy. It's the ultimate investment. He's right. And nothing boosts social mobility more than giving people the best possible start in life, giving youngsters the tools with which to make something of their God-given talents. And he's right to point out the scandal of a quarter, that's right, a quarter of work-age adults being economically inactive. 25% of the population who can work but don't. That is not sustainable. Now, the highly talented and charismatic Boris Johnson, who, to his vast credit, got Brexit done and kept Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10, was the self-confessed chairman of the country when he was PM. That's right, he was the chairman of Britain. Well, what we have in Sunak is a CEO, someone who can look at every department of state, crack the whip and make it better in a way that I hope will have echoes of his historic predecessor from the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher. And as we said on last night's show, facing down the unions with their irresponsible and inflationary wage demands could be Sunak's Falklands moment. In my view, there are 2 key questions to answer about Rishi Sunak. The first is whether he has the political judgment to succeed. Well, by zeroing in on the 5 key issues that matter most to the British people, I believe that today he has passed that with flying colours. But the other question is one to which we do not yet have an answer. Has he got the character, the backbone? Has this Prime Minister got a pair of balls? Because seeing through this 5-point plan, including tackling illegal immigration, will, I believe, see him comfortably reverse Labour's lead. But it will take political courage. There will be ups and there will be downs, including further economic and infrastructural strife in his game of chicken with Mick Lynch and the other union barons. So, frankly, things could get worse before they get better. Has Sunak got the determination, the vision, the conviction, the guts to see this through? Ultimately, whatever your political colour, we all need Sunak to succeed. But in purely political terms, if he delivers on those pledges, the Fab Five, the Rishi list, then he's booked himself another 5 years of accommodation in that famous Edwardian house in central London. So Sunak has laid out his roadmap, but there's no point having a map if you don't stick to the route. Talk is cheap. There's a lot of work to be done. So, Dishy Rishi, let's get busy. People have talked about how awkward he is around real people, including this recent excruciating encounter with a homeless man at a food shelter. It was awkward, to say the least. OK, so he hasn't got the common touch. I couldn't care less. Rishi Sunak shouldn't pretend to be something he's not. We don't need him to be man of the people, salt of the earth, someone that you'd like to go to the pub with. Rishi Sunak doesn't have to be a great person. He has to be a great Prime Minister. And today, we saw the makings of just that. Now, what's your view? Dan at gbnews.uk. I'll get to your emails shortly, but reacting to that and all of the big stories of the day, my superstar panel, former editor and current columnist at the Daily Star, queen of all media, a very old friend of mine, Dawn Neeson, businessman and activist, pub entrepreneur and, in my view, speaker of common sense, Adam Brooks, and then surely the owner of the best title, the longest-serving political editor in this country, in Fleet Street, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, let me start with you. Today was a bad day for Keir Starmer, wasn't it?
No, it was a very bad day for Rishi Sunak.
What did you have in the green room? You realise we're alcohol-free here on Dan Wootton tonight.
I know, but we couldn't even get coffee there.
Oh, that's a disgrace.
It sounded to me like the Winchester head boy that he once was, giving his end-of-term pep
Cheap
talk.
shot, Nigel Nelson.
Why cheap? Why cheap? That's what he was.
His family worked hard. They built up their business.
So he tells us.
Gave him a great education.
Indeed. And it was light on any kind of substance and pretty heavy on platitudes. And rather than the Edstone, it reminded me more of Blair's 5 pledges that he went into the 1997 election on. But at least with Blair, he put figures on those pledges to show the targets he was aiming for and to judge him on whether he would actually make it. Rishi Sunak did none of that. So inflation, forget that. Of course it'll come down by half. The Office of Budget Responsibility has been predicting that more than half. It'll be 3.8%. Similarly with debt. Debt is going to come down. It'll still be 30% higher than it was in 2012, but it will come down. When it comes to waiting lists, they're also going to come down, but by how much? 1 million? 1, 2, 3 people? We had no figures on that, and the prediction there is they'll peak in June and start dropping after that. The one interesting one was he will stop the boats. Only he won't stop the boats. That when he was questioned on that by journalists afterwards, he then said, well, I might stop some boats, 1 or 2 or something like that. He didn't make an absolute pledge to end cross-channel crossings.
Dawn, you're chomping at the bit to get in here.
I was just going to say, he didn't actually. I thought the words were very well chosen on the boat thing, because he didn't say, I'm going to stop them. He said, I'm going to tackle that issue. But as you say, Nigel, he was very, very thin on substance. How are you going to tackle it? What's going to happen exactly? He didn't mention Rwanda or any of those plans. But, I know I was going to reduce the NHS waiting list. I mean, I lost the will to live for a start, so that's 1 off the waiting list. It just went on. How do 5 promises take longer than war and peace? honestly, it was like a word soup, wasn't it? It was like, just give me some facts, give me some figures, give me how you're going to do it. It was like he was the opposition leader. He was like Keir Starmer when he says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it bigger and better and longer and harder, and then but doesn't actually tell you how he's going to do any of it. And I just thought that's what I got today. I didn't get a great speech from you, by the way. But
maybe I should be Prime Minister.
Well, I tell you what, you get my vote.
I'd rather you
going
than
at the
Rishi.
moment. Yeah, I just honestly wasn't getting leadership. I wasn't getting Margaret Thatcher.
Because he's not a leader.
You mentioned CEO. I thought he was more like a marketing man, more like the PR man, very slick. And I tell you what, I mean, when he's booted out as PM, which the Tories have a habit of doing at the moment, don't they? And it's not you, obviously. I mean, Rishi could then go on and be, I don't know, a really good presenter on CBeebies, because reading out stories to little kids would send them to sleep straight away.
Or maybe overnights on GB News. I'm going to say, Adam, that I think that today was the moment that actually Sunak moved the dial. He's got a plan. He's now made himself accountable. And in 2 years' time, he can go to British public and you say, here are the 5 things I said I'd do. Back me or sack me.
Look, I think they were sound bites just to keep the public happy.
That's Rishi on the phone, isn't it?
I tweeted yesterday...
It just said Rishi mob. I've dropped it.
I tweeted yesterday, where is our Prime Minister? And then I was quite excited to see that the Star went with it. Obviously, they read my tweet. But, look, I'm someone that does not trust Rishi Sunak. My industry needed his guidance and to hear and see him in early 2022. He went missing. He put the VAT back up for my industry. He threw us under a bus and then just went missing for months. And that was because he was keeping his powder dry and his image clean for a leadership coup that he knew was coming and had planned the year before. All of his pledges in the leadership race, he's U-turned. I think he's a liar. I don't think he's a leader. And certainly the Conservative Party would not get my vote with him as leader and Hunt as Chancellor.
Say that name carefully. I mean, look, not a ringing endorsement from Adam Brooks. What is your view, Dan, at gbnews.uk? I think it was quite a moment for Rishi Sunak in his premiership. He can now be held to account, but what's your view? Let me know. I'll be speaking to no-nonsense Tory MP Lee Anderson later this hour, and a particular focus on immigration policy. Can Rishi stop the boats? So Lee Anderson live at 9:35. But next, in the clash, as the establishment ramp up the hysteria once again, should we go back to COVID restrictions to save the NHS? Anti-lockdown microbiologist David Livermore goes head-to-head with journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. See you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today. from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Top Tory MP Lee Anderson reacting to Rishi Sunak's major speech today. He's live in the studio. Can Sunak stop the boats? He's up shortly, but it's time now for the clash. There are fears that a raft of COVID restrictions could soon be rearing their ugly heads. Ministers are reportedly being pressured to consider last resort plans to advise Brits to wear masks on public transport, work from home and socially distance if the health service is at risk of collapse from not just new cases of the virus, but an influx of flu patients, staff shortages and the usual winter pressures. While the government has for now played down the threat of such moves being implemented, health chiefs and experts have already urged people to stay home or wear a mask if they feel unwell. Meanwhile, Labour MP Rachel Maskell has called for a discussion on the return of, wait for it, mandatory COVID isolation. In other words, you get COVID, you lock yourself at home for 2 weeks. So should we go back to COVID restrictions to save the NHS? What would you choose? Save our health service or give up your freedoms? Let me know your thoughts, Dan at gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews. And please vote in the Twitter poll because Paige is keen to get your votes in. We'll get you the results of those votes very shortly. But to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome David Livermore, Professor of Microbiology at the University of East Anglia, and journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. David, let me start with you. Should we bring back COVID restrictions to save the NHS?
No, we supposedly saved the NHS 3 years ago with COVID restrictions, and clearly the NHS today is wobbling. We failed in that saving the NHS. And what's being talked of is bringing back masks. Well, look at China at present. The Chinese are incredibly assiduous maskers. Masks are still compulsory there. Every photograph shows them wearing masks. And yet they've gone from negligible numbers of cases a month ago to 250 million people infected within 3 weeks. Masks fail. They don't work. What we achieved with all the restrictions over the past 3 years was to disrupt our natural ecology with a range of viruses, flu, respiratory syncytial virus, rhinoviruses, also strep A. And we've got to re-establish that equilibrium. And that's what's happening at present. And if we put restrictions in place, all we do is we delay that re-establishment of an equilibrium. We keep kicking the can down the road. We create more and more of an immune deficit in ourselves, and it does no good. It makes it worse in the long term. We must take it on the nose, let the balance re-establish.
Nina Mishkov, society can't afford any of these measures again, and the economy can't, can it?
Well, at the present, we're only talking about mask wearing. And I'd very much like to ask David, as a medical man, why do surgeons wear masks?
To stop splash of blood from surgery, to stop droplets of saliva and so on going into the patient's
Absolutely, and also, presumably, to protect them too.
Against blood splash, but not against viruses.
Well, we don't know that.
A virus is so tiny, it passes through the pores on the mask.
Well, that's the first time I've heard that. The masks have been tested, and if there are 3 layers of their proper masks, like FFP2 or 3, and if they fit tightly, then you are protected. Now, explain to me, David, do condoms work all the time?
Yes, and if you stretched a condom over your head, then it would certainly be a decent barrier against a virus. However, you would be unable to breathe.
No,
it would kill you.
No, I'm not saying. I'm not suggesting that. I'm talking about condoms during sex. Now, condom is a barrier. It prevents, hopefully, pregnancy if you don't want it, and also sexual transmission.
I remember GCSE biology, and my teenagers, and the male reproductive fluids. The condom's a barrier. The masks don't work in the same way.
No, they don't. But what I'm saying, it's a very crude analogy to say it's a barrier.
But
it is a barrier. If you had a mask that fitted properly, a proper mask, it's been proven that countries that have in Japan and China, you cannot actually believe anything they tell you in terms of figures on who was wearing masks or case studies.
You can believe
Look at Japan.
Evidence of your eyes.
But what about Japan? OK, Japan.
Japan has had major surges of COVID over the past few months.
Japan has a population of 127 million.
Nina, first make your point. I'll come back to you, Dave.
I'm going to say, Japan, the countries that have generally advocated mask wearing have had lower deaths from COVID. Japan, in particular, so far, 55,000 deaths, I believe, and a population of 127 million.
We don't know about T-cell immunity from Far Eastern populations. What about American states? Because that's more comparable. What about Florida, who lifted mask mandates months before California, and they have lower per capita age-adjusted deaths from COVID?
Well, who knows? But it makes logical sense to me. If the virus is airborne, which it is, then if you prevent yourself from breathing in or you're prevented from breathing out an infected breath, then there's got to be more of a... There's got to be a chance.
If masks were made of condom rubber, you would be right. Unfortunately, you would not then be able to breathe through them.
We're not... That's an extreme example.
The weave of masks... No, but you raised condoms.
Yeah.
The weave of masks is such that the virus can get through them or it can get around them. And you raised the topic of tightly fitted N95 masks. Well, they have been mandated in Bavaria, for example. I think one or two other parts of
Austria
Germany.
as well.
But the parts of Germany where they've been mandated have fared no better and no worse than other parts of Germany where people have worn other...
David, if these... And I'm no fan of the masks, but if they prevented some COVID cases and prevented some COVID deaths, perhaps they're worth it.
If they did. But the evidence is they don't. Look at those numbers from China. China has gone from a standing start to 250 million people infected, 18% of the Chinese population over a matter of about 3 weeks. And those are the data that leak out of China. And yes, I agree with you. You cannot trust numbers from China.
No, you
but
can't.
Nevertheless, what you can trust is the sampling of people coming off aeroplanes into Milan from China, of whom 50% were infected. Okay. So you've got undoubtedly
are you, as
circulating.
somebody, a logical man, are you telling me that if, as we are talking here, there is no barrier between us, if there was a barrier of, say, a screen, would that make a difference?
If there was a solid plastic screen and we spoke to each other through microphones, then yes.
So that would make a difference.
A cloth weave mask does not.
Well, can we agree? Why on earth are surgeons wearing it? Why on earth are nurses wearing it?
To stop blood spatter.
It's not just blood spatter, surely.
But the point I think these surgical...
It's contamination.
But Nina, the point about these surgical masks, the blue ones you see in hospitals, is that have been used by surgeons for years. they're not considered, they weren't accepted in Germany during the pandemic as a proper face mask.
No,
so
I
the
agree.
Germans don't think they work, at least that particular variety. Can we close on another issue, Nina, which is the other COVID policies? So working from home, encouraging people to work from home. Lots of people do so efficiently, but it will cost the economy, won't it? And also the idea of self-isolation. Do we really want to go back to last winter?
No, we don't want to go back to last winter. We don't want to go back to anything like that. But the trouble is that people don't behave sensibly. They think it's all over. It's not necessarily all over. I mean, I was on the tube, about 4 tubes yesterday. Nobody's wearing masks. It's very, very, very crowded. You know, the NHS is crumbling. It's not just because of this, but many reasons which we're not going into tonight. But we need to keep ourselves healthy and to prevent ourselves from infecting other people. And it's make complete sense to me to take this. You think masks are not good enough, but to take the precautions that we can.
Well, David, let's talk about those other measures. What do you think of the other ideas? Work from home, social distance, that kind of thing?
Futile, because yes, they may do a very minor amount of good in the short term, but in the long term, we drain ourselves of a natural immunity. Normally, rubbing up against each other, we get asymptomatic infections with this or that rhinovirus.
We go to the office and we cough and we wheeze, and our immunity strengthens.
Our immunity strengthens. We get a mild asymptomatic infection.
And we've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years.
For all our individual lifetimes and as a species for thousands of years.
So how many deaths were you prepared to countenance then? What you're saying is let it rip, because that's natural. Let it rip and it'll kill off the people.
David, Sweden has come the closest to that model of letting it rip. And Sweden has the lowest excess mortality of any country in Europe.
It has a greater mortality rate than the other Scandinavian countries.
No. Denmark and Finland are now ahead. Norway is very marginally behind. But Finland and Denmark, if you look...
Again, I ask you, how many deaths were you prepared to countenance? How many old people were you prepared to see just sacrificed like that?
It is not a question of sacrificing old people.
But Nina, what about deaths from COVID policies? What about deaths from economic damage?
How much will you sacrifice their quality of life by sequestering them away from their families?
May I suggest
you take somebody who's got
people would take a lower quality of life to death,
David,
frankly.
A
lower quality of life.
Hold fire, Nina. David, you finish your point and I'll come back to Nina. David, make your final point.
That you sequester those old people away to give them a few months, few weeks of extra life, but they cannot see their loved ones. You think you're protecting them. In fact, you're denying them any quality of life.
It is not up to you, and I respect all your qualifications and your standing, but I don't necessarily respect your attitude. It is not up to you to play God and say, life and death, let them go.
Well, let any individual who wants to sequester themselves away. But you cannot do that to a whole society.
OK,
you cannot kill off a whole generation.
Nonsense, you will not kill off a generation. It doesn't have a mortality.
There you go. Look, this show is all about opinions, a fascinating and respectful conversation, and feelings are running high, understandably so. Do let me know your thoughts down at gbnews.uk, but thank you to the Professor of Microbiology at the University of East Anglia. I think you've retired now, David. Congratulations on that, David Livermore, and a good friend of mine, journalist and broadcaster, of course, Fleet Street legend Nina Mishkov, who will return to GB News very shortly. Thanks to you both. Who do you agree with? Should we go back to COVID restrictions to save the NHS? Lloyd on Twitter says no, because they make zero difference every winter for the past 20 years. The NHS has been in a mess. It's years of underfunding and poor working conditions that's failing our health service. Benjamin says it didn't work before. What would save the NHS is a removal of the current custodians of it. Rishi and his mates bin them off and get some grown-ups in government. Mark says it shouldn't be up to the general population to save the NHS. That's the government's job. And your verdict is now in. 12% agree that we should return to COVID restrictions to save the NHS. 88% say that we should not give up our freedoms again. Keep those opinions coming. Coming up, as it's revealed, parliamentary staff will now be banned from learning about white privilege in the workplace. Is this concept a myth or something we should think about? Musician and podcaster Zuby gives his take in The Outsider at 9:45. What do you think? White privilege, is that a thing? But first, after boldly promising to stop the boats today, can the Prime Minister really be the one to solve the migrant crisis? Can Rishi stop the boats? Westminster's toughest talking MP Lee Anderson joins me straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, Rishi Sunak's five-point plan earlier today included several bold promises, but perhaps the most important was his final pledge to stop the endless onslaught of migrant boat landings on Britain's shores. And now that is a promise we've heard countless times already from so many prime ministers, and with more than 45,000 illegal migrant crossings across the Channel last year alone, can Rishi really stop the boats? Westminster's toughest talking MP and Tory backbencher of the year, Lee Anderson, certainly hopes so. Keenly aware that the next election hangs in the balance, Lee believes that delivering on pledges like finding a solution to the migrant crisis will stop Labour's lunatics taking over the asylum down at Westminster. Well, Lee Anderson joins me now. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Mark.
Great to have you on the show. Will Rishi Sunak's 5-point plan wash with your constituents in Ashfield?
I think, to be honest with you, Mark, I think they've been happy with the 1-point plan with the small boats at the moment, the migrant problem. That's the one that fills my inbox every single week. People are obviously furious. I've been on this show no end of times banging on about this subject. But you know what? I think he's been bold and brave, Rishi has. He is a man with a plan. And he's actually done a couple of things since he's been the PM that no other Prime Minister's done while I've been there. Remember, there's been 3 Prime Ministers since I've been elected. So one, he's sorted the new coal mine out in Cumbria. That's music to the ears of Red Wall voters. And he's made a pledge that we have a new legislation coming into the House next month that will ensure that anybody who arrives here illegally, through illegal routes, will not be allowed to claim asylum, and they're going to go straight back, detained, and they go straight back. Now, we never had that in the Nationality and Borders Bill. We've not had that promised by a previous Prime Minister or Home Secretary. So, you know what, fair play to you, Rishi. It wasn't my first choice, but like I say, he's come out swinging. He's picked the right policies. But the problem we've got at the moment, Mark, is that trust in politics is at an all-time low. And people have been marched up this hill before, and many of us backbench MPs have as well. And we sometimes think, is it going to happen? I hope so. I hope Rishi does deliver on this because, he hasn't got that charisma and that razzmatazz of Boris. He hasn't got that. But what he has got is some strong policies. And he needs to deliver. And if he does, like I say, he will keep the lunatics out of the asylum in 2 years' time.
In my Daily Digest monologue, I suggested that today he demonstrated the political judgment that we might hope he's got by identifying the 5 key issues that matter to your voters and to the millions watching GB News and this programme. However, the other question I think remains unanswered. Has he got the courage? Has he got the guts? Has he got the balls to see this through?
Well, I think what he's done, Mark, he's put his head on the chopping block here. He's put himself up and said, look, I'm making these 5 pledges. I'm going to deliver them. And by the way, they look like the makings of a good Conservative manifesto. So he's put his head on the chopping block and he said, look, I'm going to deliver these. And if I don't, in 2 years' time, sack me. Now, it does take some balls to do that. He's staked his reputation on this. So I hope we do it. I hope he sorts the NHS out and halves inflation and grows the economy and sorts the debt out and sorts the boat out. If he does, and then, in 6 months to a year's time, people will think, you know what? He's actually delivering on his promises. And that will be the worst possible news for Sir Keir and the Labour backbenchers. Because I tell you what, Mark, like I said on that tweet today, I sit there in the House of Commons every week and I look at the shower opposite them, the Lib Dems and the Scottish Nationalists, and I think, my word, in a couple of years' time, there could be another 100 of those sort of people in Parliament, and that scares me to death, and it should the country.
Lee Anderson, I guess Rishi Sunak and all Tory MPs and all MPs will face the public in about 2 years' time at the next general election. What is the measure of success for Rishi Sunak in terms of controlling illegal immigration? He's going to stop the boats. That's what he wants to do. I don't think anyone expects that those crossings can end unilaterally. But what would a good number look like, let's say, on a daily basis?
I think what he's got to do is we've got to eliminate it, full stop, Mark. We've got to stop it. And the optics are awful of this. We've had people coming over for years in lorries and we don't see that. So we don't turn a blind eye, but it's just not the same. But with this, what I'm seeing now on your screen, people see it every single day. They see our hotels filling up. They see our public services being affected by it all. What we've got to do is, get the Rwanda plan in place, get these other agreements in place, make sure that the visuals of when we're putting these young men, these young men, by the way, these aren't genuine asylum seekers, we know that. We need to see the visuals of these getting on aeroplanes and being flown to whence they came. And once the British public see that, the trust in our government and the Prime Minister will shoot up. That's all they want, to protect our borders. And they don't want scenes like this because it absolutely makes me sick to the stomach to see it. Like I say, they're not genuine asylum seekers. They're just freeloading migrants.
I hear what you're saying, but what is a realistic timeline by which Sunak stops the boats? It's not going to happen tomorrow, is it? And I suspect it will still be going on by the next election.
Well, no, I don't agree with you, Mark. It's got to stop way before the next election. That's not good enough. We've been promising people since I've been elected, the 3 years, just over 3 years since I went to Parliament, that we're going to stamp this out next year. Then the next year comes and it's still happening. And hey presto, 3 years later, we're being told it could be 100,000 this year. No, it's got to stop. It's got to stop this year. Even if that means for me and some of my colleagues leaving the ECHR and just say, sorry, stick them on a plane and send to Rwanda, maybe that's what we've got to do. But, if Rishi's got a plan and he believes in himself, then we've got to back him. But it's got to stop way before the next election. That's not good enough.
A final thought on Rishi Sunak. He's not exactly man of the people. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think that matters. I don't think he's got to be a great person. I think he's got to be a great Prime Minister. However, some, including many of my viewers, consider him to be a corporate figure, even a globalist stooge signed up to the World Economic Forum. Some people characterise Rishi Sunak as Britain's Justin Trudeau. Are you having that?
No, I'm not having that. I mean, I keep hearing this wet nonsense all the time, and people saying it on social media. Look, I know Rishi quite well, speak to him on many, many occasions. I get on with him. I get what they say. He's not a man of the people. He is corporate. He is like a chief executive of a company. He's very polished. He's a details man. He's like an accountant. He's not got the razzmatazz and charisma of Boris, but, ask ourselves, what do we want at this moment in time? Or do we want somebody who's going to pay attention to detail, be a little bit boring, not see him on the front page of the the Daily Mirror every single day being slaughtered by the mainstream media? Do we want somebody who's going to be in number 10, getting his head down, working 18 hours a day and get the country back on its feet? And if he does that, and I hope he does, and then the country will get behind him.
Lee Anderson MP, a delight and a privilege to have you on the show. We look forward to your return in a week's time when Dan Wootton is back in the hot seat. Dan, of course, back on Monday from 9. Coming up in tonight's Media Buzz with a quarter of our working-age adults, that's right, a quarter, now economically inactive. Do lazy Brits risk bankrupting the country? My superstar panel will react to that, and we'll see a first look at tomorrow's papers at exactly 10 o'clock. But first, with civil servants blacklisting the concept of white privilege, that's right, white privilege, from parliamentary diversity training, is the whole thing a myth? Should we reflect on the idea of white privilege, or is it divisive nonsense? Well, podcaster, rapper and activist Zuby weighs in straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Rapper and podcaster Zuby is tonight's outsider. Big news, parliamentary staff are now banned from being taught about so-called white privilege, with civil servants vetoing use of the term, according to leaked internal documents. The concept refers to the supposed or perceived advantages enjoyed by white people compared to non-white people in British and indeed Western society. But it's been criticised in some quarters for being too simplistic and even divisive. This didn't stop parliamentary staff diversity group Parley Reach, encouraging colleagues to acknowledge their privilege and their internalised racism in the wake of BLM protests in 2020. Well, let's get the view of rapper, activist and top podcaster Zuby. Hi, Zuby.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I'm really well. Great to have you on the show. Zuby, is white privilege an important and true concept upon which white people should reflect, or is it a myth?
No, it's not a useful concept, in my personal opinion. I don't think it's accurate. I think it's an extraordinarily low resolution view on the reality of the world and on individuals. And I don't think that it's helpful. I don't think that it's accurate, and I don't think that it's helpful. It's extraordinarily divisive. I would argue that the concept in itself is racist, and some people may not like me saying that. But yeah, I don't think I wouldn't use the term myth, because I think we can all acknowledge that depending on who we are and all of our attributes, that we all have all sorts of advantages and disadvantages in society in various different ways. But I think to just reduce it to the concept of white privilege, especially if you're not going to talk about all of the other types of privileges that exist out there, then I think you're doing a massive disservice. And I think that this is primarily being used as a weapon rather than as something that's actually going to bring people together and help people.
Yes, I mean, this expression, Zuby, white privilege, has been floating around for a while. What did you first make of it when you heard the expression?
Well, if I hear something like that, my first question is, well, what exactly do you mean by that? Now, oftentimes people who use this term will say that it is, people describe it in different ways. Some people will just simply say that it means that your skin color is not a disadvantage or that you're not going to experience racism. Other people will say that there are some, genuine advantages and benefits that you sort of directly receive based off of this. And oftentimes people conflate it with what I would simply describe as majority privilege. If you are in any nation, there is a majority population in terms of race or ethnicity in many cases. And oftentimes a lot of the things that people would call white privilege, I would argue, are simply elements of majority privilege. And I would say that if you're going to talk about that sort of terminology, as I said before, then I would be more accepting of it if people were also open to talk about the various other concepts of privilege that could exist, not just on racial lines, but on many others. I mean, if you were to think of the things that truly make people advantaged or disadvantaged in our society, then to sort of reduce it to race being the primary thing, which is what that phrase suggests, is entirely disingenuous, and it's not accurate either.
Well, I suppose, Zuby, it ties in with so-called critical race theory, which suggests that to a degree you are prejudicial or even racist just as a consequence of the colour of your skin. In other words, if you're white, you harbour racism even if you don't know it. Is there anything in that?
It's garbage. It's a garbage concept. And I don't understand why anyone would be wanting to push this on other people. It's not good for white people. It's not good for black people. It's not good for people of any color. I don't think it's good to be telling young black or brown boys and girls that they're inherently disadvantaged in society and that white people are out to get them or are inherently privilege. In a weird way, it's actually a sort of inverted version of white supremacist concept. It's just kind of this weird left-wing version of it. And I don't think it's good to be going around and telling young white people or white people in general that they are somehow architects of, that they're playing into this racist system, and whether they know it or not, that they're racist or that they're this or they're that. I don't see how any of that helps society. I think it's much better to treat people as individuals in all of these situations, not to be constantly obsessing over race and sex and gender and sexuality with all of this stuff, and just to see people as individuals, treat people equally. Don't try to shout people down based on their race or their gender or anything like that. And, don't give people unfair advantages nor give people unfair disadvantages. Just have an equal and fair playing field as best as we can. And I think that's the best that we're going to get as a society. And I do think that we've made incredible strides. We've made incredible strides forward on this over the past several decades, let alone century. And I think that's positive and it should be celebrated.
Amen to that. Look, I've only got a couple of seconds left, but Zuby, I can't not mention the fact that you are a top rap music star. You're a businessman, entrepreneur. Of course, you've got your hit podcast as well. And you've now got 1 million followers on Twitter. What's the secret of your success? 1 million followers.
Don't buy into the victim mentality. Recognize your own potential, and you have your seeds of greatness, whoever you are. And so just keep on working. Believe in yourself.
Listen, you are a hero to me. What a star. Do check out Zuby on Twitter. It's at Zuby Music, isn't it?
That's right, at Zuby Music.
Great stuff. Zuby, we'll see you in a week's time. Fantastic stuff. What a hero, as I say. Now, coming up, with the number of British kids wanting gender identity treatment going through the roof, are children making life-changing decisions too soon? Well, I've got a story for you. Billy Burley transitioned to female before detransitioning back again. I believe he's transitioned a couple of times. It's a horrific story. He shares his incredible tale at 10:15. That will be jaw-dropping telly. You won't want to miss it. But first, with 25% of working-age people now economically inactive, do work-shy Brits risk bankrupting the country? My panel will give us their thoughts. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers and the media buzz, all after this short break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock. I am Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton. Tonight, as Rishi Sunak promises to fix broken Britain by growing the economy and sorting out the NHS and tackling the small boats, He delivers this stark warning about our increasingly idle workforce.
And it is staggering that at a time when businesses are crying out for workers, a quarter of our labour force is inactive.
So are work-shy Brits bankrupting the country? I'll get stuck into that with my superstar panel next. It will be an explosive conversation, let me tell you. Tonight I'm joined by Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks and Nigel Nelson. Plus, as he unveils plans to make numeracy compulsory in school until 18, that's right, maths in school until 18, is the Prime Minister, is he wrong to prioritise maths over other subjects? What do you think? Are we making too much of maths? What about PE? What about English? What about home economics? That's our big debate at 10:30. As he reportedly investigates the death of Princess Diana for his new book, Is It Time Prince Harry Let His Mother Rest in Peace? Social media sensation and self-proclaimed chief gammon June Slater is uncancelled at 10:40. Also coming up, as the number of children seeking gender identity treatment skyrockets 2/3 in less than 2 years, are kids being forced into life-changing surgery before they're ready? Well, have I got a story for you. Billy Burley, who transitioned to female before detransitioning back again, sounds the alarm. He's live at 10. You won't want to miss his story. Plus, we've got tomorrow's front pages hot off the press, and I'll crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass before the night is out. Lots to get through. But after this, we're going to sort out Lazy Britain. But first, the headlines with the very hard-working Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. In his first major speech of the new year, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak set out his government's 5 key priorities. He pledged to halve inflation, grow the economy, stop illegal immigration, reduce the national debt and cut massive backlogs in the NHS. He even told the public to hold him accountable if those waiting lists in England do not fall in 2 years.
Those are the people's priorities. They are your government's priorities, and we will either have achieved them or not. No tricks, no ambiguity. We're either delivering for you or we're not. We will rebuild trust in politics through action or not at all.
Well, Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said Labour also plans to tackle the small boat crisis.
We do need to see action to clamp down on those criminal gangs that exploit people, and we would make sure that we're setting up a new part of the National Crime Agency to take action and to make sure that people are not making that journey, which, you know, as we've seen all too often, ends in tragedy.
The Royal College of Nursing accused Mr Sunak of being detached from reality following that speech. Its leader, Pat Cullen, says the pressures being felt by the NHS could not be blamed on COVID or the current high levels of flu cases. She says health leaders believe that staff shortages are the root cause of the issues. Nurses are preparing to go on strike again later this month after joining the picket line for the first time in the RCN's history last month. The Prime Minister also touched on the ongoing rail strike, saying his government's door is always open for dialogue with unions. It comes on the second day of the first of 2 48-hour strikes by rail workers, with over 40,000 RMT members walking off the job over pay, jobs and conditions. Train drivers in the ASLEF union will strike tomorrow, followed by a second 48-hour RMT strike on Friday. Now, a man who raped and sexually assaulted dozens of children over a 6-year period has been jailed for life. This is footage of the 50-year-old Martin Armstrong from Pembrokeshire being arrested in July last year after technology was used that unpixelated a picture of his face found in photos he'd taken of himself abusing his victims. And author Faye Weldon, best known for her novel The Life and Love of a She-Devil, has died at the age of 91. She published more than 30 novels during her career, as well as short stories and plays written for TV, radio and the stage. She was also one of the writers on the popular 1970s drama series Upstairs, Downstairs. Her family say she died peacefully in her sleep this morning. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight with Mark.
My thanks to Tatiana, who returns in an hour's time. Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. And let's kick off with a first look at tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press. And we have the I newspaper. More bad news for our health service. NHS sending patients to hotels to ease bed blocking. 3 NHS authorities signed deals to discharge patients to care hotels, which offer accommodation for people well enough to leave hospital, but who still need some care. Also, the Daily Star having a bit of fun with Rishi Sunak's 5-point plan. PM to fix the NHS, but can't say exactly when. PM to cut debt, but can't say exactly when. PM to cut immigration, but you guessed it, can't say exactly when. The headline, I have a cunning plan. And they've done a brilliant Photoshop of Rowan Atkinson from, of course, what was it, Blackadder? And behind him is Baldrick, a.k.a. our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Those are your front pages. We'll get to more of the front pages shortly, but reacting to those and the big stories of the day, we've got former national newspaper editor, columnist at the Daily Star, TV star, GB News presenter. She's done it all. She's got more gigs than I have. It's Dawn Neeson. Drinks are on her. We also have top entrepreneur, pub businessman, activist, you name it, Adam Brooks, and the longest-serving political editor in Fleet Street, the Sunday Mirror's Nigel Nelson. Now, one of the standout moments of Rishi Sunak's 5-point plan today was a staggering revelation that 25% of working-age adults, a quarter, are economically inactive.
And it is staggering that at a time when businesses are crying out for workers, a quarter of our labour force is inactive. So our growth plan will look at how we can support those who can to move back into work, including through the welfare system.
Unfortunately, Rishi is not guilty on this occasion of hyperbole. Britain has suffered the 4th highest increase in people dropping out of work since the start of the pandemic in 2020, behind the global powerhouses Colombia, Chile and Switzerland. Coupled with reports that 1 in 10 unemployed youngsters plan on never getting a job. And let's not forget the work from home brigade. You have to fear for the future of UK PLC. So as many of us grind hard to put food on the table and keep the country running, are the rest of these work-shy Brits bankrupting the country? Well, look, Adam, you are a top entrepreneur. You've got the work ethic. Can you explain to me why 25% of working-age adults don't work?
Well, look, this started in the early 2000s, Mark, under Blair and Gordon Brown. And the benefit system of this country become a way of life, a choice for many people that didn't want to work. You know, they could survive on benefits and, you know, tell a story to get those benefits. Whereas before, and rightly so, benefits were for the genuinely needy people of this country and should remain that way. Now, I was astounded by what Rishi Sunak said. You know, 25% of our workforce.
I thought it was a mic drop moment in the speech.
It's astounding, and I think there's another stat that there's 565,000 more people since 2019 that are not working and not actively seeking to get a job. That's unforgivable. You know, you can't go through life not working, expecting handouts all the time. And another reason I'll blame is maybe like Instagram. We have a lot of influencers out there that are travelling the world that are not working. You know, they're earning their money via social media. And I believe a lot of young adults believe that why should I go and do a 9 till 5? You know, Joe Bloggs is earning from Instagram. He's going all around the world. You know, it seems it's an unrealistic way of life.
Do you think we also set a dangerous precedent paying healthy adults to stay at home on and off for 2.5 years during the pandemic?
COVID made us more lazy.
The messaging.
Yes, look, at the end of the day, for 18 months or whatever it was, for people to be able to sit at home and get 80% of their money, spend more time with their family, do things they like, enjoy the sunshine, it ingrained in people's minds, why should I be in an office 9 till 5? Why should I be on a building site 9 till 5? It's made things worse, without a doubt. And I think the stats now showing that, you know, the inactivity since 2019, we're one of the worst in the world.
However, it's interesting, isn't it, Nigel? Because, you know, many people, many hardworking Brits over 50 in their early 60s, they've worked hard all their lives and they're entitled to put their feet up, aren't they?
Well, if they want to retire, certainly they are, and they can afford to retire. One of the problems you've got is so many of those people in that age group, the 50 to 69, are sick. And it doesn't help terribly. I mean, it is a really complex issue, but it doesn't help hugely that you've got NHS waiting lists of 7.2 million. So you've got 4 million long-term sick. They will get sicker if they can't get treatment, which means they're off work for longer. They will then have caring responsibilities on top of that. And so it's those kind of areas you've got to tackle. And as far as the work-shy bit goes, we're not work-shy. I mean, the UK has the longest hours in Europe. We work more hours than the Germans and the Austrians.
Low productivity. It's not working, is it?
But we have low productivity. You're absolutely right. We work... the Danes work 4 fewer hours than we do and have the highest productivity. So you're right, the productivity is not working, but it's not as if people are not going to work. They're just not doing the job very well when they get there.
Dawn, you've got 12 jobs. Why can't we all be a bit more Dawn Neeson?
Well, you know what? The only part of Rishi Sunak's speech that made me wake up was this bit, and I thought, how bloody dare you? I really got angry, because if you drill down into what he actually said, most of those people, as Nigel's quite rightly alluded to, are in their 50s to their 60s. They are retired. A lot of these people were forced out of work by the government's idiotic behaviour to close down the economy for 2 years. I mean, who knew we'd end up in this financial mess when you do that? I mean, what a shock, not. And so they were forced out of work. So they have decided now, I could survive. I'm going to survive on my savings and my pension. They're not a drain on the economy. They're not pouncing off benefits. They're not a drain on this economy at all. They are now surviving on their own because they were forced into this situation in the first place. And this personally affects some people in my family. So they've decided now, I'm not going back to work. Why would I go back to work? Pay extortionate taxes, the highest taxes for 70 years when I was put into this situation by the government in the first place. They are actually not a drain on this economy, and I don't bloody blame any of them. And a lot of them, Mark, are also long-term, as you've said, Nigel, long-term ill, who are getting iller because they shut the NHS down, made it the National COVID Service, and disabled, long-term disabled and their carers who got no help as well.
OK, I'm sure we'll return. We will return to that conversation. I did say sparks would fly, but coming up, more sparks on the way. With the government keen to make maths mandatory up to the age of 18, is Rishi Sunak wrong to prioritise mathematics over other subjects in schools? What about PE? What about English? What about home economics? My panel will debate that at 10:30. But first, with nearly 8,000 British children awaiting gender identity treatment, are kids making life-changing decisions far too soon? Billy Burley, who transitioned his gender before transitioning back again, delivers a stark warning. His story is quite extraordinary, and he's next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Now, my next guest shares the gut-wrenching story of someone who went through hell and back in a desperate bid to cure his childhood trauma. Billy Burley transitioned from being a biological male to a trans woman after being encouraged to change gender by the US medical establishment. Does that sound familiar to you? He suffered 7 years of grueling surgeries under the promise it would cure him of deep-rooted depression, but still never found the happiness he was promised, resulting in him detransitioning. Now, after finding faith in God and finally feeling comfortable in his own skin, Billy has a stark warning for the nearly 8,000 children awaiting NHS gender identity treatment in the UK and their parents who think going down the trans path will magically cure them of their troubles. I'm delighted to say that Billy joins me now. Hi, Billy.
Hey, Mark.
A privilege to have you on the show. Can I start by asking you what traumas you were trying to heal when you transitioned into a woman?
The traumas that I had as a child is I had this reoccurring thought, and it started in the 5th grade, that God made a mistake. I'm a girl. And that's the exact thought that plagued me for all of my younger life into adulthood. And that thought actually plagued me so much that I had to deal with it, Mark. I had to deal with it, and a lot of people may turn to maybe drugs, alcohol, something, but I actually turned to working out as hard as I could to move the pain out of my mind and into my body. And that worked for a number of years. But Mark, when I got into college, you could say all of that closet that I pushed all of my emotions into, the door blew off the hinges. And at that point, I had to start surgeries. Or at that point, I actually sought help for my mental condition.
Would you say, looking back on it, that your decision to transition into becoming a female was someone else's decision, or was it yours?
The situation that I had, because I transitioned back around 2000, when I sought help from the mental health community, I went in saying, I want to be healed with, I want to stay man, I want to be healed, but I got this battle that is going on in my mind. And after 5 years of trying to deal with that battle, I told the therapist that I wanted to transition. I did a lot of reading in books, journal articles. I tried to learn what was the cause and what was the solution for my problem. And everything that I read told me that I had to transition, that I possibly had a birth defect, that my mind, when I was in utero, was washed with the wrong hormones. And to fix that birth defect, I had to change my body to match my mind. And when I told my therapist, after 5 years of seeing her and trying to fix my problems, that that's what I wanted to do, she gave me a hug and she told me, Billy, I knew you were going to arrive at this decision one day. I didn't know it was going to take you this long. And she said, we will walk this road together. She gave me the letters I needed to go to start on testosterone blocker, on estrogen, and to start the transition process. So it was my decision, but once I made that decision at that point, she embraced me and helped me through the complete transition.
So therefore, the safeguarding that, looking back on it, you needed was not there. What procedures did you have done? You've mentioned hormonal treatment, but you've had operations as well, haven't you, Billy?
A great number of them, Mark. The very first operation I had was actually a penile inversion. And in that very first surgery, I also had a brow shave and an Adam's apple shave. And after coming out of the operating room, the surgeons and the nurses could not stop the bleeding from my new artificial female genitalia. They had to put more gauze into the cavity. They had to put a sandbag on my lower abdomen. I also had to receive a blood transfusion and plasma. So my scheduled 2-week stay in the hospital for that procedure turned into a 3-week stay. And very fortunately, I'm still here. The bleeding did stop, and I was able to recover from that surgery. Then after that surgery, I had a number of other surgeries, including, Mark, voice feminization surgery. And in that surgery, after the surgeon took a knife and cut my throat and got to my vocal cords, he tied sutures around my vocal cords, and I was in twilight sleep. So for that surgery, Mark, I had to actually come out of the anesthesia to wake up some, and I had to speak while the surgeon actually tightened the sutures so that he could adjust the tightness so that I would achieve a higher pitch voice. And so I went through all of these surgeries, believing what the therapist conveyed to me, what the journal articles said, and that I would eventually find my peace as soon as my body matched my mind. And Mark, I didn't find it. It was never there. After 7 years of trying, it just wasn't there.
It didn't happen. And you don't have male genitalia now, do you, even though you've transitioned back to being male?
With surgery, I've had that body part removed in the theory that that would make me happy. And flat out, it did not make me happy. And I'm very fortunate because I'm married now. I have 2 daughters, and but you could say that I'm not a functioning man in that respect.
Well, I'm very happy for you that you're so happily married now, and those stepdaughters, I'm sure they adore their stepfather, and I congratulate you on your journey. You found the faith and love of God. I know you're in a really good place now, and you found the peace that surgery didn't give you. So big congratulations on your journey. You look brilliant. I know that my viewers and listeners will just be absolutely on the edge of their seat listening to your story. Can I ask you what you would say to any young people in this country, in the UK, watching or listening, who are considering transitioning, or their families, what would your message be, Billy?
Do not do it. Absolutely. Do not do this. I have made many mistakes, and coming back and transitioning back to male, I've actually have identified some of my problems that I had as a kid, because being very skinny, having a speech impediment, being dyslexic, turning words around in my mind and not learning how to read until much later in life, I learned that I had a lot of trouble as a kid. And instead of having gender dysphoria, out and out, I had dysphoria. I was a confused young kid. And that confusion manifested its way into gender dysphoria. And I was trying to find acceptance, significance, and security by changing my body to match my mind. And that was wrong because, Mark, also I was sexually abused when I was in the 6th grade. So that contributed to my problems as well. So I have talked to a number of other detransitioners and also people who haven't detransitioned. And what I have learned, including myself as a data point, is that we have problems as kids, as children, and we don't deal with them. So the mental health professionals, instead of doing gender affirming therapy, should be doing trauma therapy to help children deal with the childhood traumas that we carry into adulthood. Our acceptance, significance, and security is not found by chopping off body parts. We need help. We need therapy, not gender-affirming therapy.
Billy Burley, I and my viewers and listeners are humbled to hear your story. You've got amazing courage to come on the national television airwaves to tell your story. And on behalf of my viewers and listeners, we wish you well. We wish you every happiness and your family in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
Billy Burley there with quite the story. Coming up, with Prince Harry reportedly looking into his mother's death to fill the pages of his new book. Should he instead let Diana rest in peace? Self-proclaimed Chief Gammon, an absolute hero of mine, freedom fighter June Slater, is uncancelled at 10:40. But first, as he plans to make the subject mandatory to the age of 18, is Rishi Sunak wrong to force maths upon our youth, especially at the exclusion of other subjects? My superstar panel give their verdict next.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
She's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. And more front pages have landed courtesy of a mad dash from Mariana, and we've got the Daily Express. Rishi, judge me on my pledges to fix Britain. PM's 5 promises to halve inflation, grow economy, reduce debt, cut NHS waiting list and stop the migrant boats. Next up, let's have a look. I think it's a Daily Mail next, isn't it, Darryl? Rishi, judge me on my 5-point plan to fix Britain. Rishi Sunak staked his premiership on delivering a 5-point plan to fix the country. I've outlined that list as featured in the Daily Express, and it certainly is a message that's landing across most of the front pages. Even The Guardian they've lowered themselves to write about the Prime Minister. Sunak urges people to judge him on results, and PPE gowns in a £122 million order not safe for use in NHS. There's a surprise. Also, brilliant author Faye Weldon, outspoken and fearless writer, dies aged 91. A brilliant writer and quite a remarkable woman. Now, let me just offer you a little bit of balance on that Guardian story regarding PPE gowns. Michelle Mone has previously denied via her lawyers that she had any involvement in the company in question, PPE Medro. There you go. We're nothing if we're not about balance here on Dan Wootton tonight. The Sun now. Baby born after mum dresses up. Virgin Mary gives birth in Peterborough, and one of his names is Joseph. Pregnant Lauren Coates dressed up as the Virgin Mary to give her family a laugh on Christmas Day, then promptly gave birth when the baby arrived early. The receptionist was decked out in a £20 biblical outfit from Amazon when she went into labour at her parents' home in Peterborough in Cambridgeshire. Shocked Lauren, who named her son Joshua Joseph, said, "We were all joking the baby would come on Christmas Day, but there was no way I expected it to happen. Talk about tempting fate." And that's what I call news. Amazing. Dawn, I've got to say, I asked my wife to dress up as a Virgin Mary, but we both agreed it was a miscasting situation.
Where's this going? Yes. Thoughts and prayers
I've got
with
the
Mrs.
Look,
Mrs. Mark.
Let's get reaction to all of the big news of the day with my brilliant superstar panel. Former national newspaper editor, columnist at the Daily Star, TV and radio presenter Dawn Neeson. We also have entrepreneur, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the longest-serving political editor in Fleet Street, the Sunday Mirror's Nigel Nelson.
Rinsing that tonight.
Now, whilst Rishi Sunak's bold pledges today on key issues such as immigration and NHS wait times were very much welcomed, one of his policies didn't seem to add up. The Prime Minister has announced that he wants to make mathematics mandatory in some form until the age of, wait for it, 18. And here's why.
Imagine what greater numeracy will unlock for people. The skills to feel confidence with your finances, to find the best mortgage deal or savings rate. The ability to do your job better and get paid more. And greater self-confidence to navigate a changing world.
Despite that rationale, the move has been branded as half-baked and out of touch by education experts who claim there's a shortage of maths teachers as it is, and that low-attaining pupils are already too overwhelmed by other content to focus on that subject. Our very own Nigel Farage was among critics, asking how will quadratic equations help to solve broken Britain? Now, well, let's find out what my panel think. What do you think about this, Nigel Nelson? Does this policy add up?
Well, I don't like the idea of it being compulsory. I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I was so bad at maths that they suggested I didn't even take my maths O-level, which I didn't. That was a result.
You did well to get out of that, because you can't get out of maths anymore at
No, you
GCSE.
can't. No, in my day, you could actually get out of it and carry on. I've learned a lot of maths since, because politics and economics go hand in hand. Yeah. So I've actually had to do it. First of all, yes, I do. I think that the general sentiment's right. People need to be numerate, and even more so nowadays. But the question about it is how you actually attract people to do it, rather than compelling them to do it. If I'd have been compelled, I'd have just gone up the wall. But if you can make it attractive, so at the end of it all, you're learning computer literacy, you're learning about spreadsheets, graphs, personal finance, all the things that you need in the modern world, that part is fine. What I don't understand is why he talks about making it compulsory.
Well, I suppose he's trying to lift standards. As I mentioned in my monologue at the start of the show, Adam, he's thinking big for himself and for Britain.
He's so out of touch. The average man and woman of this country, don't need algebra being taught to them at 18 and being mandated, I don't think I've used half the things that I learnt at school in maths. I got a B in GCSE, and I didn't really put a lot of effort in, to be fair. But I'm a publican, I do use numbers and I do need to calculate certain things, but half the things that are taught to these kids growing up aren't used. I would rather maybe make sure pupils once a week are taught about budgeting, about credit cards, about finance, the importance of having insurance. My mum taught me most of the things that I needed in life, and I also learnt through mistakes, from 18 to 22. I made some silly mistakes with finance, car finance and whatever. I think the curriculum needs to sort of give life skills to people now. Algebra doesn't suit everyone. I think it needs to be more customised to pupils that want to go on to university, that need maths degrees to be a doctor or a scientist. That needs to be there and needs to be pushed. But the average man and woman will not use half of what they're taught in school.
Well, there's an idea from Adam Brooks, Dawn Neeson, which is actually...
you sound surprised, yes, occasionally.
Yeah, it happens once every leap year. But it's an interesting thought that we keep young people at school and we just give them an A-level in surviving life.
I think that was a really good point. It's a point I was going to make as well. Because, I woke up this morning and the first thing I said to the old man was, I'm really worried about the level of maths education in this country. Nobody is. Nobody said that this morning, did they? It's like, I'm worried about having to pay my mortgage,
doesn't
my heating bill.
want us to compete with China? Isn't that a good thing?
Well, we are in the COVID stakes, aren't we? No, but what I want, look, rather than concentrate on the maths, right, I think the problem in this country with education is English. We have 9 million adults in the UK are functionally illiterate. 1 in 4 British 5-year-olds struggles with basic vocabulary.
Yeah.
And if you can't speak English properly and use grammar and punctuation, you've got no chance of even understanding maths, because English is the root of all education.
But half our adverts are now promoting street talk and slang and things.
But you know what?
That doesn't help.
You were talking about white working class boys earlier on, and 3/4 of white working class boys failed to achieve the government's benchmark in basic language at the age of 16.
Yeah.
What are we doing to our kids? When I ran a newspaper, I might have mentioned this, when I ran a newspaper, I would have journalists applying, you might have noticed as well, Nigel, for jobs, right, on a newspaper, OK, who've been through university, finished, and they could not write proper English, speak proper English, punctuate, use grammar, and it's like, what are we teaching our kids?
Was it like, oi, Dawn, gives a job?
Something like that, yeah. And I gave
that was mine, by the way.
I gave them a job, by the way, the ones that did that.
You never replied.
Don't you remember the interview that went viral of Rishi Sunak saying about his friends, and then I asked him about working class, and he said yes, and then, oh, actually, no, I don't. He's proving again he doesn't really know what goes on beneath that banker level
Did you say banker?
Banker, he said banker.
Yeah, banker level of person.
He said Jeremy Hunt earlier on, he said banker just now.
Yeah, I'm being careful tonight. But I just think we've got a Prime Minister that has no clue what the working class use, do, behave. You know, he has no idea. And that's worrying, because the working class are the benchmark and the support of this country. He doesn't have a clue.
There you go. A damning verdict from Adam Brooks, who returns with his nomination for Greatest Britain and Union Jackass alongside my brilliant panel at 10:50. But first, with Prince Harry digging deeper into his mother's tragic death to fill the pages of his new book, should he let his mother Diana rest in peace? Straight-talking internet sensation June Slater is next.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
So, looking forward to this, it's time for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, Prince Harry's upcoming memoir will reportedly explore the circumstances surrounding the tragic death of his mother, Princess Diana. That's according to the Daily Mail's Special Investigations editor, Sue Reid. Reid said researchers for the Duke of Sussex's explosive tell-all book, Spare, released on Tuesday, had reached out to individuals connected to the late Princess of Wales's fatal car crash in Paris back in 1997, including eyewitnesses, journalists and French police. Reid, who's probed the case for decades, added, a French source involved in the original accident investigation has revealed that Prince Harry is intensely focused on getting more information about his mother's final hours. Well, let's get the view now of social media sensation, self-proclaimed Chief Gammon. She's got a huge following online. And do you know why? Because she drops truth bombs. Hi, June Slater.
Hi there.
But you know, June, the truth will get you in trouble these days.
It does, sadly, especially with fact checkers who don't know what the truth is, unfortunately.
I know. Well, look, let's drop a few truth bombs about Harry. I mean, I think, you know, you're a very empathetic person, and our heart goes out to Prince Harry, having lost his mother as a little boy. It was a tragic accident. But do you think he should be sort of delving into the circumstances of how she died, or should he let her rest in peace?
Well, I lost my mother when I was young, and it was tragic. And if I was in his shoes with his entourage of people, I certainly wouldn't have got to his age and gone through military college, learning to be a pilot, getting on with other royal duties, Invictus Games, and a marriage, a very public marriage, and then sat back after I've been dischuffed with my family to turn round and say, I'm going to investigate my mother's death. It would have been the number one thing I would have done. The trouble with this couple and their actions, for me, everything points back to a disgruntled couple. This comparison that's constantly made by him and her to Diana, where I'm not a royalist, I haven't got a lot of time for King Charles. My loyalties were with the Queen because she never put a foot wrong. And after that, there are a lot of hangers-on, so please don't mistake this as some sort of misjudged support for the royal family. But the person that's in the same shoes as Diana Spencer is Kate Middleton. She's married to the heir, and she's also given birth to another heir. She's in the most difficult position, and she does it with ease. She floats through this job, and no one notices the eloquence in which she does her duties. The sideshow, the other couple, they're in the Andrew and Fergie role. They can do what they want. If this was a horse race, they're the also-rans. Nobody's bothered what they do. They could have got on with quite a nice life, doing a few royal duties. He could have supported his military career. He could have gone on with his Invictus Games. He could have continued all of it. But there's an element of greed here. The Queen even said she thought Harry was too much in love with Meghan. I do think the lad is he's not a lad, but he's genuinely in love with Meghan. But just to show you how fake I see them, I just watched a clip from his 60 Minutes interview where he says quite emotionally, and his breathing is perfectly timed. It's almost as though an actor has coached him. He says, "A time comes when silence is betrayal." And you think, wow, what enlightenment. And then you realise it's from a speech back in 1967 by Martin Luther King about the Vietnam War. And, a friend of mine gave me that off Facebook called Matthew. The trouble is you can easily pick things apart now with social media and the ability to share your news. We don't have to wait to be told by the BBC. So every single thing they do is divisive, and this is a couple who have been paid £100 million for basically slagging off their in-laws. And if this was a normal family, the crises that they've had, including a very traumatic miscarriage, is something that people go through every day of the week in normal lives and have to dust themselves off and get up for work in the morning. The thing I find absolutely incredible is the amount of support this couple get from working class people who will not even see a tenth of their money. Just to give you, for instance, of how pampered they are, Meghan made a few trips across the Atlantic, and the cost for a private jet, by the way, to do the Atlantic crossing is between $50,000 and $90,000 for fuel. That's without landing charges, that's without the cost of the jet. And this is the kind of thing that was frowned upon. I mean, even Prince Charles, when he went across to Hong Kong for the handover, he had to fly business class. He wasn't even allowed in first class because the royals cannot just go fragrantly spending money out of the royal purse. And I think Meghan thought, gee, I'm a princess. This is going to be one hell of a ride. And it ain't, because she's not the most important character. Kate outshines her. She's dignified. I'm not saying this because I support the royals. I'm saying this because this is what I see. Yeah. She's not given us anything to complain about. Whether she's happy or not, different issue. This couple are angry, and this couple are using the media, and we can't trust the media. We can trust GB News because you go as far as you dare with Ofcom and what have you. But if we look back to the Princess Diana days, Martin Bashir falsified bank statements to encourage Diana to talk about her family. He faked bank statements from people who were close to her so that she would open up. Would Diana have opened up and given us so much insight into this family if Bashir had been outed for what he did? Because Bashir would not have got away with that in this age of social media. People like you would have been onto it. So they're a divisive couple. And I think what people need to do before they start giving loads of sympathy is what you're sympathising with. Are you sympathising with the fact you dislike the royals enough to swap your allegiance to them? or do you really feel sorry for them? Because I don't know how you can feel sorry for someone who just earned 100 million quid. And next news, the money will go straight into the foundation, no doubt, which is a tax advantage scheme, basically. If it goes into an ordinary account, 65% tax. If it goes into a foundation, that fee's down to 5% tax. There's so many advantages to this couple living this privileged lifestyle. I think ordinary people should concentrate on what's going wrong with the country, with the cost of living crisis. And if you're going to comment on Facebook and Twitter feeds, do something that makes a difference. Get on your MP's page and tell him why you're not happy with him and tell him why you want the cost of fuel to come down. Stop worrying over these two. That's how I see it.
Too right. Well, that's how you see it. That's why we love listening to you, June. I've only got a couple of seconds left, but what would Diana make of all of this? Because, you know, you're a student of human nature, June. I watch all of your videos. And Harry, you said the couple are angry, and Harry is not a well bunny, is he?
Well, he's been manipulated. She's a strong woman. You know, Diana wasn't a strong woman. Diana was a lovable woman. Diana was a very attractive woman with a good nature in the wrong family. It wasn't allowed to grow, and sadly we lost her very young. I was actually in Saint-Tropez at the same time she was. We went past Dodie's villa and they were out on a jet bike, and after she got killed, we went around the shops in Saint-Tropez and the people were literally heartbroken. They were absolutely devastated. We left flowers on the jetty at the villa. It was so sad. I was sad. Everyone was sad. We loved her. We never felt like this about anyone, ever. And unfortunately, this couple that are very average in what they do are milking this woman's legacy. They're milking it, and that's not on for me. And I don't know what Diana would have made, but I think Diana would have seen through Meghan Markle for her own son.
Let me tell you that June Slater drops truth bombs 24/7 on her Twitter handle. She's everywhere, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, at June Slater 17. Unmissable stuff. June, we'll catch you in a week's time. Thanks so much. What a lady. And there you go. Quite a comprehensive breakdown of what's going on in the world of Harry and Meghan. It's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And doing just that, the former editor and current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and political editor at the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Dawn, who's caught your eye? Your greatest Britain?
I'm going to nominate Faye Weldon, fierce, feisty, feminist, great writer, wrote Lives and Loves of a She-Devil, one of my favourite books, made into a great TV series. Died aged 91, Monday, I think it was. So a great writer, great feminist, and a fierce lady. R.I.P.
Absolutely loved Faye Weldon, and she was fearless as well, wasn't she? And quite un-PC. Adam Brooks, your greatest Britain today?
My greatest Britons are all the hospitality workers that worked every day during December and the festive period, are facing a very uncertain future, and that is partly down to the government not understanding what my industry needs and not understanding, you know, going forward what has to happen. Those workers, you know, they've got a very uncertain future.
OK, and I can't argue with that one. Nigel Nelson.
Mine are striking rail workers. What they're doing might be inconvenient, but striking is never easy, and I think they deserve some respect for standing up for their rights.
OK, well, look, three compelling suggestions, but I'll go with Adam tonight because the hospitality industry have been through hell, and there are so many young people on pretty low pay who rely on work within hospitality, and they gave up their Christmases, so I salute you. Cheers to the hospitality workers. Dawn, who's caught your ire today, your union jackass?
It's plural. It's all the COVID zealots, all the people that suddenly think it's a really good idea to wear masks every time they step out the door, if they step outside the door, to go back to having meetings online rather than going out, and supporting the hospitality industry, and all the people that just want to go back and turn the clock back to living under that regime where we're all locked down again. What is wrong with these people?
What is wrong indeed? Adam, your union jackass.
My honorary union jackass is the WHO for scaremongering again over COVID. And this is the same WHO that declared an emergency pandemic on monkeypox when in 2022 just 25 people actually ended up dying of that disease. I don't trust them. Their leader is being investigated for corruption and genocide. They scare the living daylights out of me. Do not trust the WHO.
Well, I've agreed with you in the past. I agree with you now. I consider them to be the World Health Organization. But how about your union, Jackass, Nigel?
It has to be Rishi Sunak for imposing compulsory maths on all 18-year-olds without doing his own arithmetic. Tories have missed the target for recruiting maths teachers every year since they've been in power, and last year they missed it by 196.
Brilliant stuff. I'm going to give it to Dawn Neeson, a sentence I've never said before. And it's
Liar.
the COVID zealots.
Many of my followers say it every night after the show, Mark.
Too right. My message to the COVID zealots is just say no. Thanks to my brilliant panel who have knocked it out of the park, but this show is nothing without you. Thank you for your company. We'll do it all again for the last time tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Dan is back on Monday, so do join us tomorrow for one last hurrah. We've got some great guests and some great debates. Next up, it's Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers with 3 top comedians. See you tomorrow at 9.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. In his first major speech of the new year, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak set out his government's 5 key priorities. He pledged to halve inflation, grow the economy, stop illegal immigration, reduce the national debt and cut massive backlogs in the NHS. He even told the public to hold him to account if those waiting lists in England do not fall in 2 years.
Those are the people's priorities. They are your government's priorities, and we will either have achieved them or not. No tricks, no ambiguity. We're either delivering for you or we're not. We will rebuild trust in politics through action or not at all.
Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said Labour also have plans to tackle the small boat crisis.
We do need to see action to clamp down on those criminal gangs that exploit people, and we would make sure that we're setting up a new part of the National Crime Agency to take action and to make sure that people are not making that journey, which, you know, as we've seen all too often, ends in tragedy.
Well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is due to give his first speech of the year tomorrow. Sir Keir will claim that a short-term mindset dominates Westminster under the Tory party, and he'll also speak on their handling of the crisis within the NHS. He will also pledge to create the sort of hope you can build your future around and promise a completely new way of governing under his leadership. While the Royal College of Nursing accused Mr Sunak of being detached from reality following his speech today. Its leader, Pat Cullen, says the pressures being felt by the NHS could not be blamed on COVID or the current high levels of flu cases. She says health leaders believe that staff shortages are the root cause of the issues. Nurses are preparing to go on strike again later this month after joining the picket line for the first time in the RCN's history last month. And the Prime Minister also touched on the ongoing rail strike, saying his government's door is always open for dialogue with unions. It comes on the second day of the first of 2 48-hour strikes by rail workers, with over 40,000 RMT members walking off the job over jobs, pay and conditions. Train drivers in the ASLEF union will strike tomorrow, followed by a second 48-hour RMT strike on Friday.